They left her for dead in the dry basin beyond Silver Rock, where the earth split and drank heat like blood. Her name was Clara Vance, though by the time the buzzards circled low above her body, there was no one left to say it aloud. The wind moved across the shale with the sound of brittle paper tearing. Her dress, once calico blue, now hung in rags that fluttered like dying flags over her dust-covered legs. The boots had been taken from her feet. Her hat, too. One braid had come loose, caked in dried blood where her scalp had split from a rifle butt. They'd thought her dead. That was their first mistake. It started 3 days earlier when the Hammond brothers rode in from the southern trail, 6 of them on lean horses, with skin sunburnt and eyes like rusted nails. Her father, Elias Vance, had squinted through the barn slats at the sight of them. He didn't like drifters, didn't like men who asked questions without looking you in the eye. But they came with a letter from Sheriff Hobb in Wicken's Pass and a tale about rustlers crossing the canyon line. "You seen anyone come through, miss?" the oldest asked Clara, nodding at her as she hauled a bucket of water from the pump. His words were courteous, but his smile was wrong. It stuck too long and didn't touch his eyes. "No one but a fox last night," Clara had answered, wiping her hands on her apron. She was 17, and she knew how to hold a man's gaze long enough to make him uncomfortable, but not so long he'd think it a challenge. That was a lesson her mother never got the chance to teach her, but she'd learned it all the same. The brothers stayed the night, then one more, then another. They watched her when she walked between house and barn. They asked questions about the neighbors, about the land. They asked her younger brother Jack about how often her father rode to town. On the 4th morning, Elias told them it was time to go. They smiled and saddled up, but by dusk the barn was burning, Jack was shot through the back, and Clara was being dragged by the wrists across broken ground. They didn't shoot her, not yet. The eldest, Malden Hammond, said he didn't like wasting bullets. Said nature would take her faster than a lead ball would. Said the coyotes would make her quiet. Then he spit beside her head and turned back toward the smoke that marked the place her family once lived. Her hands were tied behind her back, her mouth gagged. When she woke in the basin, her body was half-baked by the sun and buzzing with flies. A beetle crawled across her eyelid. She flinched, and that was the first sign she was still in the world. By dusk, she managed to roll onto her side. Her tongue was swollen, her wrists bled. She used a sharp edge of rock to saw at the rope, her arms contorting in angles not meant for human bone. When it finally split, the skin around her wrists looked like raw meat. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried when she saw Jack fall. She didn't cry when her father's body was hung on the corral post with his hat nailed beside it. She saved her tears for something that mattered. By the time she staggered upright, the world was a boiling blur of orange and gray. Her breath came in gasps, sharp as knife wounds. There was no water, no trail. The coyotes followed at a distance, whining, waiting. She walked north, toward the line of hills that carved the world into 2 countries. The one where her family had lived, and the one beyond it, where law ran thinner than whiskey and mercy came only from ghosts. She didn't know it yet, but the man was already riding. He came from the edge of those hills, dressed in black, with a long rifle slung across his back and a scar that split his jaw in 2. His horse was gray and angry-eyed, and the man rode as though the earth owed him a debt he'd come to collect. He wasn't heading for the ranch. He didn't know Clara Vance's name, but the smoke reached him by morning, and he turned without a word. Clara collapsed in a wash of silt and dried river bone. Her lips cracked open, the sound of her own breath louder than the wind. A shadow crossed her face, and for a moment she thought it was death come to collect her in a black hat and boots. "Easy now," said the voice, low and dry. "Don't move." She blinked, and there was a man crouched beside her. She saw the glint of his belt buckle, the line of his boots. He poured water onto a cloth and pressed it to her lips. She flinched, tried to spit. He didn't let go. "Drink," he said again. She drank, the cloth stung like ice. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him, and the word came slow and hollow from her throat. "Clara. Clara Vance." She nodded. His face didn't change, but he stood up, scanning the horizon, rifle in one hand, thumb twitching against the trigger guard. How many? She whispered, 6. He nodded once. All right, he said. Then we got work to do. He didn't ask her to tell the story. He saw it in the way she couldn't look toward the south, in the rope burns, the torn dress, the dirt ground into her palms. He saw the same thing he'd seen in war, when boys came back with half their bodies missing and the other half wasn't worth saving. He built a fire that night, gave her a blanket, cooked a strip of salted pork and laid it beside her. She didn't eat at first, just sat with her arms wrapped around her knees and her face hidden behind her hair. You ever shoot? He asked. She didn't answer. You're going to. In the morning, she tried to stand and nearly fell. He caught her with one hand. First thing you learn is balance, he said. Balance and patience, rest of it comes after. Clara sat on a flat rock while he unslung his rifle. He handed her a smaller one, light enough for a girl, but mean enough to punch through a man's skull. That one's yours now. Learn to love it. Learn to sleep with it if you have to. He pointed to a fence post in the distance, then to a second one farther off. Pick one, fire once, don't flinch. Her hands shook. The recoil knocked her shoulder back. The shot missed. Again. She shot 6 times, hit nothing. Again. By sunset, she hit the post once. Good, he said, but we've got a long road to ride and 6 names to bury. He never told her his. She asked once and he only said, names die fast out here, keep yours close. But by the second night, she heard a different name spoken low by a trapper they passed, that there's Holt Avery. Used to ride with Colonel Price down in Arkansas, said to have killed 17 men and burned 3 towns. Clara didn't ask if it was true. She didn't care. What mattered was that he rode for her, that he looked at the Hammond brothers not as men, but as debts to be paid. They headed south on the 3rd day, tracking through dry gulches and coyote trails. Holt moved quiet, never wasting words. Clara followed, rifle strapped across her back, boots too big for her feet. She didn't cry when they passed the smoking ruin of her home. Didn't pause when she saw the outline of her brother in the scorched dirt. She just looked once, then kept walking. Holt rode behind her that day, silent. They reached the trading post at Morrow's Crossing by nightfall. Holt bought ammunition, whiskey, and a jar of salve for her wounds. The trader eyed Clara but said nothing. He knew better. You see 6 riders come through? Holt asked. Maybe, the man said. Could have been 4, could have been 10, men like that blur together. Left west toward Devil's Spine. Left a body hanging outside town. Preacher said he spoke too loud. Clara's mouth tightened. They left a trail. Only blood and bad smell. Holt nodded. That'll do. They slept in a cave that night, high above the scrub plains. Coyotes howled below. Clara cleaned her rifle with shaking hands. Holt watched her, expression unreadable. Don't ask for mercy, he said. You're not gonna get it. I don't want mercy, she said. I want them to die slow. That was the first time he smiled. And the night closed in like a veil of smoke. The desert turned colder as they rode west. In the daylight, the dust burned their eyes and stung the back of their throats. At night, frost climbed the rocks like ghost fingers. Clara stopped speaking except when spoken to. Holt didn't mind. Silence traveled better than noise. They followed a trail of scavenged camps and rotted food. The Hammond brothers weren't careful. They didn't have to be. No law reached Devil's Spine, only dry creeks and forgotten graves. The land out there had long stopped pretending to be hospitable. On the 5th day, Clara shot a coyote clean through the heart. Holt didn't praise her, just nodded once and kept moving. They buried the meat, left the pelt. She hadn't aimed out of hunger. She was learning the rhythm of the rifle, the way it whispered when lifted, the way the stock pressed into bone, how each breath mattered more than the next heartbeat. Holt watched her from under his brim, saw how she stopped flinching at the sound, how she cleaned the barrel without being told, how she walked taller despite the blisters on her feet. At night they made small fires beneath overhangs. Holt slept with one hand on his pistol. Clara didn't sleep much. She'd stare out into the brush with eyes that didn't blink, lips barely parted, listening. On the 6th morning, they found the preacher's body. He hung from a cottonwood just off the trail, his arms stretched wide like he'd tried to catch the sky. His boots were gone. His Bible was torn and scattered in the sand beneath him, pages turned brittle by the wind. Clara stared at his face a long time. He looked surprised, as if death had interrupted him mid-sermon. "He was trying to stop them," she said. "He told my father once that the Hammond boys weren't meant for this world." "He was right," Holt said. They cut the body down. Holt burned what remained of the book. Clara took one page, folded it into her shirt. Psalm 94. He will repay them for their sins and destroy them for their wickedness. They moved on. By the time they reached Devil's Spine, the hills had turned sharp and mean. Rocks jutted like broken teeth. Scrub grew twisted, hunched like old men dying under the sun. A shantytown stood at the basin's edge, iron roofs, crooked walls, and a single saloon with doors that swung too fast on rusted hinges. No one looked long at strangers in Devil's Spine. Looking brought questions. Questions brought bullets. Clara and Holt left their horses at the edge and walked in on foot. She wore a wide coat now, her braid hidden beneath a hat. She carried the rifle low, sling tight, hand resting on the butt like she'd been born to it. Holt led the way into the saloon. The place smelled of sour beer and sweat baked into floorboards. A piano sat unused, keys chipped and yellow. One man snored on a table, face buried in cards. Holt approached the barkeep, slid 2 silver coins across the counter. "6 riders came through here," he said. "Big men, one missing half an ear." The barkeep's eyes flicked to Clara, then back to Holt. Saw them 2 nights past, took the trail west toward Elkhorn Wash, paid with stolen coin, didn't tip. "Where were they headed?" "Didn't say. They leave anything behind." The barkeep glanced at a shelf behind the counter. A ring sat there. Gold, with the Vance cattle brand carved into the face. Clara stepped forward, took it. Her hand didn't tremble. Holt turned to go. "If they come back, don't speak our names." "I don't know your names," the barkeep said. "Good." They left the saloon. Clara slid the ring into her pocket without a word. That night they camped beneath a ridge of basalt. Holt oiled the rifle and spoke while he worked. "You need to understand something. There's no clean way to do this. You'll get 1 shot, maybe 2. They won't come easy. You don't hesitate. You don't gloat. You don't wait to see if they fall. You shoot and move." She watched the firelight flicker in his scar. "I'm not afraid of dying," she said. "You should be." "I was back then, not now." He looked at her then, like maybe he believed her. Like maybe she reminded him of someone. He said nothing else. The 7th day brought rain, not much, just a spit of water that turned the dust to mud. Clara tightened her coat around her ribs and studied the trail. Tracks led into a narrow gorge choked with deadwood. Holt dismounted, knelt to inspect the ground. "They stopped here," he said. "Maybe made camp, see this boot mark, drag in the heel, that's Malden, walks heavy." "How long ago?" "Hours, maybe less." Clara's pulse thudded low in her ears. She checked the chamber of her rifle. 5 shots, 1 for each still breathing. They moved slow through the gorge. Holt took the lead, Clara close behind. The rock walls closed in, red and silent. Nothing moved, no birds, no wind. Then a voice rang out ahead. "Don't take another step." They froze. A man stepped from behind a boulder, rifle raised, thin, bearded, with a jagged scar across his cheek. One of the younger Hammond brothers. Clara remembered his name, Jesse. "I told Malden someone'd come sniffing," he said, grinning. "Didn't think it'd be a girl." He didn't see Holt until it was too late. The rifle barked once. Jesse staggered back, a hole blooming through his chest like a black flower. He fell hard, rifle clattering against stone. Clara stepped forward, stared down at the body. "One," she said. They moved quick. Gunfire echoed from deeper in the gorge, short bursts, echoing like hammer strikes. More voices, more footsteps. The next brother came fast, Raymond, the youngest, wild-eyed and swinging a sawed-off. He fired too high. Holt dropped him with a shot to the gut. Clara stepped over the bleeding man without a glance. "Two." They kept moving. Holt reloaded on the run. Clara pressed herself to the rock as another man came into view, red bandana, eyes bloodshot. He aimed. Clara didn't wait. She fired once. The bullet punched through his throat, sent him staggering backward into the dust. "A three." Holt looked at her. This time he said nothing, just nodded. At the end of the gorge, the last three waited. Malden in the center, coat flared, pistol drawn. Beside him, the brothers who'd dragged her, John and Eli, both tall, both pale and smirking. "Well, look what rose from the dirt," Malden said, voice calm. "Little Vance girl, heard you were dead." "I was," Clara said. "Now I'm not." Malden nodded to his brothers. "You brought a ghost to kill us." "No," she said. "He brought himself. I came to watch you fall." Holt stepped forward, raised his rifle. The brothers moved fast. Guns flared. Clara dove sideways. The world became noise and smoke. She heard Holt grunt, heard a body hit the stone. She didn't look. John rushed her. She swung the rifle up and fired from the hip. Missed. He slammed into her, knife in hand. They fell together. The blade slashed her arm. She bit his wrist, wrenched the rifle between them, pulled the trigger. The shot ripped through his ribs. He jerked, twitched, fell still. "Four." Eli turned to run. Holt shot him in the back. "Five." Only Malden remained. He stood over Holt, one foot on his chest, pistol aimed down. "You don't know who I am," he said. Clara raised her rifle. "I don't need to." He turned to face her, smiling. "Go on then, do it." She fired. The bullet took him in the mouth. He didn't smile after that. "Six," she said. Holt groaned, blood soaked through his coat. She knelt beside him. "You going to die?" she asked. "Not today," he said. She helped him sit, bandaged his side. They didn't speak for a while. When they left the gorge, 6 graves marked the bloodied stone. Clara didn't pray. She didn't look back. They rode north again, slow. The land behind them felt lighter somehow, empty in a way that couldn't be refilled. "Where will you go?" Holt asked. She didn't answer. Far ahead, the wind shifted. Carrion birds scattered from the cliffs. The trail forked, and the sun dipped low behind the hills, carving long shadows across the path. Clara rode at the front. The valley held its breath in the weeks that followed. Rain fell once, enough to stir the dust and smear the blood that hadn't fully dried in the cracks of Devil's Spine. But the dead stayed buried, and the townfolk who'd once turned their eyes away now looked long and hard when Clara Vance passed through. They didn't speak her name, but they knew it. She didn't stay. The trail north took her past burnt-out wagons and bone-pale cattle carcasses. She crossed the edge of lands where no post rider dared travel, into country carved by creeks that ran red with iron and hills jagged enough to tear a man's skin from bone. Holt followed, slower now, riding with his side bound and his hand never far from the wound. He didn't complain. He didn't need to. Clara saw it in the way he sat stiff in the saddle, in the shallow lines of his breath. "Tell me why you helped me," she said one night, when the stars were so sharp they looked like they could cut. He poked at the fire, didn't answer. "I need to know." He looked up then, the scar on his jaw catching a ribbon of starlight. "I lost a girl once," he said. "Years back, she got in the way of a man I didn't kill fast enough." "What was her name?" "He didn't say." She didn't ask again. They passed through Sutter's Run, a town built around a dead mine and held together by rust and suspicion. Clara traded her old coat for one lined with deerhide. Holt bought ammunition and a bottle of whiskey he barely touched. At the edge of town, a man watched them from the shadows of a livery barn. Tall, dark skin, one eye gone milky white. He didn't speak until Holt passed. "You Avery." Holt didn't break stride. "Depends who's asking." "Name," Elijah Coyle, heard what happened in the spine. Words spreading. 6 dead by a girl's hand, riding beside a ghost. Clara stepped forward. "You here to stop us?" Elijah grinned. "Not me, but someone will be. Hammond blood's tied to bigger things. They weren't just drifters." Holt frowned. "Go on." Malden Road courier work for the Harper Union. Carried messages nobody else wanted. He dies, certain folks start sweating. You made noise in places built on silence. Clara stared at him. "Then they can sweat." Elijah looked at her long and slow, then nodded once and walked off into the dark. They camped outside town. Holt spread a map across a flat rock, traced a line west with his finger. "There's a place near Dustwater Flats," he said. "Used to be a station for pony runs. Empty now, could hole up there a while." "We hiding?" "No, we're watching." From Dustwater, the land fell away into sun-bleached plains and stretches of cracked salt. Not much grew there. Not much moved. That made it easier to see what did. The station sat half-collapsed, a roof missing on one side, stables filled with rats and mold-black hay. They cleaned it out, patched a wall, built a fire. Holt slept more than before. He healed slow. Clara spent her days on the ridge above, rifle resting across her knees, watching the horizon like it might decide to bleed. At night, she cleaned the weapon over and over, her hands raw from lye and wire brush. The silence there wasn't empty, it was loaded. They came on the 12th day. 4 riders, dust-covered, quiet as vultures. Clara saw them an hour before they reached the station. She didn't shoot, she watched, waited. Holt was already loading his pistol when she came down. "They're not from the Hammond line," she said, "but they're looking." He nodded. "Then let's show them what they found." They dug trenches, set traps, loaded extra powder in the shotgun shells Holt had taught her to pack by hand. By sunset, the riders drew near. The first one wore a wide-brimmed hat and a silver badge with no markings. His horse was nervous, pawing the dirt. "You the ones came out of Devil's Spine," he called. Holt stood in the open, rifle across his chest. "Depends on who's asking. I represent interests in Junction Gulch. Some of those boys you killed did work for us. Then they did it badly." "Maybe so, doesn't change the fact you stepped out of place." Clara stepped beside Holt. "No, they did. We just put them back in the ground." The man tilted his head. "You the girl. Does it matter?" "It might. Depends if you're as good with that rifle as they say." She didn't answer. The silence did. The man smiled without warmth. All right then, last offer. Come with us. No more blood. Clara's voice was ice. Blood's already been spilled. Only question left is who it belongs to. The shooting started quick. Holt dropped the first man. Clara took the second off his horse with a shot to the neck. The third tried to run. One of the traps caught his leg, split it clean. The last man got a shot off. It hit Holt in the leg. He fell, swore, kept firing from the ground. Clara moved fast, no hesitation now. Her body remembered the rhythm, the breath, the weight of vengeance. She finished the last man with a bullet through the spine. Then it was quiet again. Blood steamed in the cold dirt. Holt grimaced, pressed a rag to his thigh. "You good?" she asked. "I'll live. Then we clean up." They burned the bodies, took their weapons, found a sealed letter in the pocket of the man with the badge. Inside, a list of names. Hers was third. "You're marked," Holt said. "So are you. Difference is I've been marked a long time. You're just getting started." She looked at the flames, then at the empty line of horizon. "Then let's keep going." And so they did, through old war trails and outlaw passes. They learned the shape of ambushes before they happened. They left their names behind like snake skins. Each town whispered different stories: a girl with eyes like a storm, a man with a broken face and hands that never missed. They didn't try to quiet the stories. They fed them. The Harper Union sent more men, hired bounty riders, ex-militia, even an ex-preacher who'd once shot a judge in Kansas. None of them returned. At Canyon Notch, Clara killed 2 men in the dark with a knife and buried them under thorn trees. At Bitter Trace, she rode through fire to rescue Holt when a trap went wrong, dragging him through smoke while the barn collapsed behind them. The legend grew, but so did the danger. By the time they reached Black Hollow, Clara Vance was no longer a ranch girl. She was a name written in powder and blood. And still she wasn't finished. Not while the list in her coat pocket kept growing. Not while she dreamed of her brother's last breath. Not while Holt's wound festered and he refused to rest. They were hunted now, and they knew it, but they weren't the ones dying. Not yet. Black Hollow lay rotting at the edge of the frontier, tucked between badlands and a stretch of dry pines that whispered to themselves at dusk. The town had once been silver-rich, thick with men and money, but both had bled out years ago. What remained were ghosts and the few who fed on them, card cheats, ex-scouts, girls with painted mouths, and men who'd outlived the warrants on their names. Clara and Holt rode in without speaking. The horses were worn. Holt's face was pale, jaw locked against the pain in his leg. The wound hadn't closed right. Infection crept under the stitches like something living. They took a room above a shuttered bakery. Clara cleaned it with boiling water and an old shirt. Holt lay in the bed like a corpse that hadn't yet been claimed. He refused a doctor. "Too slow, too curious," he said. "They'll talk." So she became doctor instead. Whiskey for cleaning, thread for sewing. He groaned once as she pressed the needle in, but otherwise stayed silent. She saw his teeth grind, saw his breath falter, but he lived. She stayed up that night, watching the window, the hallway, the blood-soaked rag on the floor. She didn't sleep. By morning, word had spread. The girl with the Vance eyes, the man with the bone-deep limp, they didn't need to introduce themselves. The air around them did it for them. At noon, a boy knocked on their door with a note. "The Harper men are already here. They know your face, tonight, at the Silver Buckle." No signature. Clara stared at it, then burned it in the lamp flame. She turned to Holt. "If we leave now, you'll die in the saddle." "Then we don't leave." She looked out at the town, the crooked rooftops, the half-buried rail line, the chapel with no bell. It wasn't a place built to hold violence, but it would tonight. The Silver Buckle sat at the far end of the square, part saloon, part gambling den, all rot. Its owner was a woman named Mercy Day, once married to a railroad man, now widowed by whiskey and greed. She wore a pistol on her hip and didn't blink when Clara walked in, rifle slung low. "Don't bring blood to my floors," Mercy said. "I won't," Clara answered, "but someone else might." Mercy gave a short nod. "Harper boys have been drinking in the back room, 4 of them. 5th came in this morning, wears a marshal's star, but that ain't what he is." "Who?" "They call him Calder Veil." The name meant nothing to Clara. It did to Holt. When she returned to the room, he was sitting up, sweat beading across his forehead. She told him the name. His jaw clenched. Veil's not just a gun. He used to hunt Confederates for bounty, then Pinkertons, then anyone. He gets paid by the kill. Does he know who I am? He will. That night she dressed slow, clean shirt, buckled belt, braided her hair back tight, took the good rifle, the hidden knife, kissed Holt once lightly on the forehead, though he'd never asked for kindness. His eyes opened as she turned to go. "If I don't come back," she said, "burn this place." He gave her a look, not quite sorrow, not quite pride, something older. She stepped into the street. The wind had picked up. Dust danced in spirals along the plank walks. The town watched her through slitted windows and cracked shutters. Somewhere a dog barked once, then stopped. Inside the Silver Buckle, laughter echoed low, forced. The back room doors were closed. She pushed through. The 5 men looked up as one. At the center sat a tall figure in a long coat, badge gleaming. His face was pale, eyes a washed-out gray, mouth too wide. "Miss Vance," he said, standing, "been looking forward to this." "Then you came too far," she said. "There's nothing left to find." Calder Veil tilted his head. "Oh, I think there is. You've made quite the name for yourself. 6 dead at the spine, more since. Harper's got a price on you bigger than a freight line. They want your body cold. I prefer it breathing, for now." The other 4 rose. One had a shotgun, another twin pistols. All of them had the posture of men used to winning. Clara didn't blink, didn't breathe deep. She saw the angle of the nearest wall, the half-open window, the cracked whiskey bottle beside Veil's boot. "You'll try," she said. The first man moved. She dropped him with a shot to the chest, spun as the second drew. Her rifle kicked and his arm snapped back like a twisted branch. The third fired wild. She ducked, rolled, came up behind a table. Veil laughed. "You think you're faster than me." She threw the knife. It caught his cheek, a shallow slice, but enough to throw his aim. His bullet tore through the table edge. She fired. The round punched into his shoulder. He fell back, howling. The last man ran. She didn't follow. Veil lay on his back, blood spilling between his fingers. "You're dead," he said. "Not today," she answered. He reached for his belt. She shot him through the hand. Then again through the knee. "Don't ever come for me again," she said. He screamed, but no words came. She walked out of the buckle, blood soaking her sleeves, boots coated in sawdust and grit. The townsfolk parted like water. Back at the room, Holt was awake, pistol ready. "Well," he asked. "It's done," she said. He nodded once, "Then we ride." They left Black Hollow before dawn. Behind them, smoke rose from the saloon. Whether it was fire or just the old wood finally giving way, they didn't stop to see. West now, always west. They rode into lands no map named, toward the edge of mountains that tore the sky into shreds. She didn't speak for miles, neither did he. Then finally he asked, "What now?" She looked ahead, jaw tight, eyes dry. "They killed everything I was," she said. "Now I kill what I must, until they forget the Vance name, until they learn what it means." The wind howled between stone spires. Far off, thunder rolled. They kept riding. They came to a land where the wind never rested, where the bones of old camps still lay half-buried in salt and ash, where the sky turned yellow at dusk and silence hung so thick it felt like a trap closing. Clara Vance had become a myth by then, somewhere between a girl and a curse. Traders spoke her name in low tones. Fathers warned their sons. A Harper executive's head had been found on a stake outside Junction Gulch with a page from the Psalms pinned to his chest. No one claimed it, but everyone knew. It was the same handwriting carved into the skin of Calder Veil before he bled out in a mining pit 2 days after Black Hollow. She left no mark where she passed. No campfires, no footprints. Holt taught her that. Now Holt was dying. It started with a cough, just a dry thing, dust or whiskey. Then the blood came up in thin strings. The wound in his leg festered despite salve, whiskey, and heat. His skin turned waxy. His voice rasped low in his throat, more gravel than sound. Clara knew. They made camp in a hollow beneath a canyon bluff, sheltered from the worst of the wind. A shallow spring trickled nearby, more metal than water. Holt sat wrapped in a wool coat, hands shaking as he tried to pour coffee. He spilled half of it. She didn't move to help. "It's time," he said, quiet. "No. Girl." She looked at him, really looked. He hadn't been a strong man in months, but now he looked hollow. Like the bones were giving out one by one, and he was just trying to keep them stacked upright. "There's one more," she said. "I know, you think I'd die before I saw it done." They spoke of him then, Warren Harper, the man who built a freight empire on blood, who funded the Hammond line, who'd sent Veil and the others, who owned the kind of men that called themselves law when it suited them, the final name on the list Holt found in Veil's pocket. Clara had never seen Harper's face, but she knew where he was. Everyone did. Southridge Estate, a mansion carved into the high plateau above the canyon rim, guarded by 30 men, steel gates, a private rail line. No one entered without invitation. No one left without it either. Holt coughed again, worse this time. He bent forward, spat blood into the fire, and chuckled as it hissed. "I'll get you there," she said. "You'll get yourself there." He handed her a folded map. On it he'd drawn lines, circled names, scribbled notes in his cramped hand. His whole plan pressed into parchment. "I've been planning this since Devil's Spine," he said. "I knew it'd come to this." She stared at him. "I'm not leaving you." "You already did," he said, not unkindly. "You just haven't realized it." She sat beside him until the fire died. At dawn, she buried him beneath the red stone. No marker, no words, just a rifle round pushed into the soil above his chest. He wouldn't have wanted a cross. Clara rode alone. The wind met her like a blade as she crested the ridge. Southridge appeared below, rising like a scar against the land. Stone towers, slate roofs, chimneys pouring smoke into a sky too wide to hold it. She left her horse in the scrub. Took the rifle, the knife, 2 pistols Holt had balanced and waited for her hands. She wore black, no coat, no disguise. The time for hiding had passed. She came through the back line, crawling the last mile. Slipped between the outer sentries at night, knifed one in the neck, left the body hidden under mesquite. Another she strangled with wire. No sound, no light. She was smoke. She was death in dry boots. The main house loomed, lit by oil lamps, 2 guards on the porch. She shot one clean through the eye. The other ran. She let him. Inside, chaos, footsteps, shouting. She moved fast, room to room, 2 more dead on the stairwell. One tried to take her from behind. She drove a knife into his thigh and shot him point blank. Blood on her face, smoke in her lungs, but her hands stayed steady. She found Harper in his office. He sat behind a massive desk, half-drunk, shirt open, suspenders loose. He was older than she'd imagined, fatter, but his eyes were sharp. "So," he said, "you're her." "I am. I should have killed you first. You tried. I can give you money." She didn't answer. "I can give you names, other men, worse than me. You're the last." He stood, hand drifting toward a drawer. "Don't." He froze. She raised her rifle. "This is for Jack, for my father, for Holt, for the preacher in Devil's Spine, for every woman you bought silence from, for every piece of land you stole, for every body left hanging." Harper opened his mouth. Whether to beg or curse, she never knew. The shot dropped him to the floor, hard. He didn't move again. She stood over him a long time, breathing, listening. Outside, the guards were gone or dead. The estate burned as she walked through it. Fire catching on drapes, spreading to the roof. She didn't look back. At the canyon rim, she paused. The wind blew harder there. She could see forever from that height, rivers like veins, hills black with shadow, trails she'd once ridden with fear in her throat. She tossed the list into the wind. It scattered. She left the rifle behind. No one followed her as she walked west into the sun. The girl they tried to bury had died in the basin. What walked now was something else. And the land remembered her, in dust, in silence, in blood that never washed away.